Hi, I think this is the second video I made on GB News. The last one was my broad thoughts on it. This one is a little bit of an update, and perhaps is a bit more cynical, but I feel it has to be said. If you're not familiar, GB News is a relatively new news network. I think it was set up in about 2020. I can't recall exactly, but it was sort of presenting itself as platform that would be more honest, more um, let's say less subdued by political correctness and by just having honest debate about things. Now, at the time, they were accused of seeking to sort of market themselves after Fox News in the States, and they have repeatedly denied that would be the case. Andrew Neil, of course, one of the founders, left. He has now left GB News. I'd be interested to know more about that. He's been a bit vague on the reasons. He said that there was disagreements in the direction it was going in. I don't know what that means. I've got respect for Andrew Neil. I think he's a very capable journalist. I think he's intelligent, and I think he argues his case as well. I have to say, I felt for a while now that well, first of all, GB News, I don't have access to it on the Sky box set, but I've seen enough of their videos on YouTube to have some idea. I agree with a lot of the positions the presenters take in terms of uh, speaking up against woke ideology and identity politics and the issues around that. I do like the fact that GB News will ask questions that the BBC won't, of people like Greta Thunberg. That's important because public figures should be scrutinized. Um, and I agree more or less with their stance on wokeism. However, I'm starting to wonder now, what is GB News really, if not just a right-wing echo chamber? I want to be clear here. I'm not saying that every single presenter on GB News is a right-winger. I don't think that's the case. But I do think that the the trend or the overwhelming um, angle that they take is basically this whole thing about we're anti woke. Let's denounce woke stupidity, and a big litmus test for me is their attitude to American politics. Now, I'm yet to see a single GB presenter, and maybe I'm wrong, criticize Donald Trump. Not one. Yet they go out of their way to condemn Joe Biden. Um, Now, this to me suggests very much that they're playing a partisan game. I don't think I don't see how they can deny that. I also think it's a bit of an echo chamber. They may well have differing points of view in terms of guests. So I'm not saying that they only have people who agree with them. They will have left wing guests, and they've had some rigorous debates there. I would say the overall angle of GB News is definitely right wing and conservative. And that's okay, but they should just be honest about it. They shouldn't pretend that there's some sort of neutral platform. They're not. They're really not. I'll give you an example. Patrick Christie's one of their presenters. He had a piece attacking celebrities for what he saw as virtue signaling over Ukraine. Now I get the format that this is an opinion. It's his show, it's his opinion. Much like you get on LBC, you have presenters voicing their opinions. The problem is because it's broadcast news, that is going to come across. So he was attacking the celebrities for supposed hypocrisy because they've been mocking Donald Trump for 4 years, well, while he was president, and now they're all lining up to support Ukraine. There may be some truth that celebrities do virtue signal. I don't disagree with that. But here's the problem. Christie's made this blanket statement that has no evidence whatsoever. He claimed that if Trump was still president, Ukraine wouldn't have been invaded. Now, this is a line I've heard from right wingers a lot recently, and it is one that has absolutely no evidence. Consider the following facts, okay? Facts. Obama was president for 8 years. Now, in his first term, that is 2009 to 2013, Russia didn't invade any countries. In his second term, Russia, as we know, annexed Crimea. So on looking at that time frame of things, what's to say that Trump had got re-elected and Putin wouldn't have went ahead anyway? I honestly believe that Putin would have done this regardless of who was in the White House. Why? Because I think Putin's motivating factor is irredentism, this idea of getting back, as he sees it, ancient Russian land. I mean, indeed, you need to ask, and Christie's didn't bother mentioning this or considering this, if Putin had invaded Ukraine because Biden's seen as a soft president, as a soft touch, why not do it in March 2021 when Biden had just come into office? Surely Biden would be even weaker then because he's fresh and inexperienced as a president. So I just think it's a weak theory, and it is purely speculation. There's no evidence for it, none. Um, I mean, the fact is, for 4 years, Donald Trump was flattering Putin, sucking up to him. Even if you go with the theory that, well, that was all a ruse and he was actually quite tough behind the scenes, it's possible. I mean, after Salisbury, it's true that the American State Department expelled Russian diplomats. But I disagree with right wingers who say, oh, it's just words from Trump. It doesn't matter. Because this is the excuse they use time and time again. Oh, it's just words. It's just words. It doesn't really matter. When you're a former president of the United States, words matter. Indeed, words mattered when he was in the White House. He publicly denigrated NATO for 4 years. Now, again, I get the argument. Uh, Countries within NATO weren't paying their share and America was shouldering that disproportionately. That's a reasonable complaint from Washington, and Trump had a right to raise that. But he done it very publicly. He done it very publicly. He never criticized Putin publicly, not once in 4 years, not once. On the day of the invasion, for Trump to come out and call Putin a genius, I thought was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And even after that, right wingers still support him. I do think that there is a Trump-like following, a cult-like following. I'm jumbling my words because that's how intertwined it really is. There's a cult-like following around Trump, and I think GB News is perpetuating this by pushing the. I mean, as Christie's put it, these celebrities have said "Orange Man bad." Well, I would turn it around and say, well, for Trump supporters and apologists like you, it's Orange Man good, no matter what he says or does. This is a big problem I have with right wing Trump supporters. They have a real blind spot. And occasionally they might criticize something he had said, like Douglas Murray finally brought himself to criticize Trump, I believe it was after the January 6th event. But that was after years of serving as his apologist. Now, I respect Douglas Murray, but he's just another example of a right winger who cannot really bring himself to recognize what Trump is, an unstable demagogue. I do not believe that Donald Trump is the savior of the West. This is not an appraisal of Biden. This is not to say that Biden is. I personally think both men are not really fit for the White House. I think Biden's less inflammatory. I think he is more statesmanlike overall. But Biden does fumble his words, and he's now had two big foreign policy flaws: the collapse of Afghanistan and now the invasion of Ukraine. I don't think Biden will go down as a great president unless something really changes soon. I also think Biden has been far too pandering to the woke left of his party, which is divisive. But, if I was American, what I would like to see is a strong centrist figure. They could be Republican or Democrat. Honestly, at this point, all I would be looking at is, are they sensible? Are they statesmanlike? And are they a unifying figure? How anyone could claim that Trump is a unifying figure is insane. How anyone could say that Trump is fit to lead a democracy after he so openly disparaged democracy, he couldn't accept that he lost. It is abhorrent. And honestly, I think if you're a dogmatic Trump supporter, you've got a blind spot, really. It's one area I really disagree with conservatives and right wingers on. And even among them, there's conservatives who can't stand Trump. But that is one indicator of GB News. It is basically, you know, it's become Donald Trump's propaganda outlet in the UK because they never criticise Trump. They constantly attack Biden. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2024 if GB News is still around, how they, report the American election. Mark my words, if they're going down this path, they're going to go out of their way to flatter Trump because he will run again, and they'll go out of their way to attack Biden. Um, they won't report it in a neutral way, show both sides. They'll just go out of their way to be propagandists for Trump. Now, for me, the issue isn't that they should be absolutely neutral. If they have a bit of a bias, that's to be expected. The BBC has a left wing bias. Most outlets, no matter how hard they might claim to try, have a bias. My issue with GB News is their pretense that they're not Britain's Fox News. They are. They're a right wing echo chamber. And I have to ask, what what is your purpose other than just attacking woke ideology and Joe Biden? I mean, what's your message here? Are you really interested in intelligent debate, or are you just interested in pushing an agenda? In which case, you're no better than the BBC or any other network. And I think, to be honest, is genuinely hard to do because human beings are what they are. They have strong views. People pontificate. Another indicator of this is the way they model Nigel Farage. On the Facebook page, he had three posts in a row with Nigel Farage. Now, one of them he's attacking Chris Bryant because Bryant had called him a Russia stooge in Parliament and said that he took money from Russia today. Farage has strongly denied this and threatened legal action. Um, I do think that Nigel Farage, for years, his big enemy has been the EU, and I do feel that he has sent out the message that the EU is a bigger threat than Russia. But the EU hasn't attacked any country in a military sense. Um, I would also ask Farage, do you agree with your hero, Donald Trump? Because Farage is almost sycophantic in his support for Trump. Does he agree with his hero, Donald Trump, that Putin's a genius? So I'm disappointed by GB News. For a while, I thought maybe they were onto something. Maybe this was a breath of fresh air. I'm sure there'll still be times where when I agree with the presenters. Um, I respect Colin Brazier, for example. I think he has good things to say, but it is starting to look just like a right wing echo chamber and soapbox for right wing pundits. And that's okay. We live in a democracy. It's good to have different opinions, but at least be honest about it. Don't pretend that you are anything other than that. Um, GB News is still struggling to find its feet. Apparently, has technical problems. By the way, the whole thing about Farage, getting into pubs and just that's his whole shtick is just sitting down in a pub and talking to the locals, the real Britons, and of course they're all Brexiteers. So where is the plurality there? How is that any different from, say, a BBC audience being all metropolitan students or lefty students? It's it's two sides of the same coin, and honestly, I think it is genuinely I'm trying to think of any networks out there that are genuinely centre ground. It's a struggle. There's not many. Sky News is perhaps slightly to the right, but I've even heard people say Sky News is a left wing outlet, which is ridiculous. Um, Probably when all is balanced out, Sky News is probably the most middle ground because the BBC is very clearly to the left. I've made no secret of my issues with the BBC, but I do believe GB News is going in the other direction. It is basically Britain's Fox News. Um, so maybe that does place Sky somewhere in the middle. Incidentally, I think Sky has some very good correspondents. I think this Lisa Doucette is on Sky News. Um, I think she's with Sky. I might be, or is she with the Babe? I should know that. But yeah, so I'm disappointed. I mean, GB News doesn't have a massive amount of support. It's, their videos get maybe 30, 40, 50,000 views, top videos 100,000. I wouldn't say that they, at this point at least, have the same influence of the BBC, but to be fair, the BBC is 100 years old, GB News is 2 years old, so we have to be fair in that regard. I would say this though, if they want to survive, I think they need to. I'm not going to say tone it down in terms of some of the angle that they take of criticizing woke thinking, but they have to be more than that. They have to be more than a network that is just pushing this single narrative. And right now, that's what they seem to be doing. I think if they're to survive, they need to perhaps get one or two more openly left wing presenters to balance it out a bit. Um, why not have a Remain presenter, for example, not to get us to rejoin the EU, but just for balance? Why not have someone who is very critical of Donald Trump as a presenter, just for balance, instead of the current lineup of Trump cultists, with probably one or two exceptions? Honestly, the number of presenters on GB News that will go out of their way to defend Donald Trump is telling. Um, so I'm disappointed by it, and yeah, that's my take. I really think they need to adapt a bit. They're a new network, so they're still finding their feet. They've probably, to be fair to them, they probably had some impact, and I think people who are fed up of the BBC's bias will naturally have flocked to GB News. But I'm curious as to why Andrew Neil left, and I suspect it might be for this reason. Or maybe it's just a personal thing, he didn't get on with co-presenters or something. But I'd be interested to know what the reasoning was for that. If I'm ever invited on the GB News, which is unlikely, but if I'm ever a public figure, and I am, I won't waste the opportunity to put some of these points to them. Not necessarily to attack the people who've invited me on the show, but to say, well, to make the points I've made about issues like this. I really some people might say, well, it's a past. Why talk about Donald Trump now? Honestly, in a normal election cycle, American election cycle, the defeated president, we wouldn't be talking about him 2 years later or over a year later. But the truth is, he's like a stink that won't go away. He probably will run in 2024. So unfortunately, he is still very much in the news. But I just think people have a real blind spot when it comes to Donald Trump. I don't care if they criticize Biden, but just don't be Trump sycophants. At least recognize that on the very day of the bloody invasion, literally bloody invasion, for him to say that Putin is a genius is disgusting. Um, Absolutely disgusting. Even if he meant it as a swipe at Biden. Again, this just shows Trump's ego, doesn't it? Because he's more interested in attacking Joe Biden than he is about putting America first, putting Western interests first. If Donald Trump was really patriotic and cared about this, he would offer to work with the president. He would offer to support the president when Biden is making tough moves. Um, but for him to just constantly be jibing away, all that's going to do is play into Russia's hands.